It's the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast with Tony Rourke and Kevin O'Flaherty.
SeizeYourBusiness.com, making you money. Share it on Facebook, share it on LinkedIn, Twitter, our blogs, YouTube videos. Listen to our podcast, getting so hot that it's burning up the stereo.
Welcome to the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast with Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law. That's me, and I've got my radio partner, Scott Mathis from Plateau to Peak Consulting here. Our topic today is going to be avoiding the cash flow danger zone, and our guest is Michael Reese from B2B CFO. If you find the podcast helpful, please review us on iTunes. That helps us out a lot and helps us get a little bit more exposure. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mike. And Mike, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Michael Reese, partner with B2B CFO. I provide chief financial officer services to business on an as-needed basis. So businesses that don't really need a chief financial officer on a full-time permanent basis, but could really use the advice of a senior financial executive. I provide those services on a consulting basis.
What for people who are a lot of our listeners are just people that are getting started in business and they're doing the CEO, COO, CFO duties, everything in between.
Right.
Tell me what a CFO will traditionally do for a business.
Well, the CFO is really a strong partner for the CEO to help move the business forward and achieve the growth goals that the CEO has for the business. Make sure the appropriate financial infrastructure and financial strategies and financing for the company is there for it.
Okay, so if we look at the CEO as kind of the vision guy that makes the ultimate decisions, the COO is the guy that makes sure the operation and staff are running the way they're supposed to be running. The CFO is the guy that monitors expenditures and helps plan financially. Is that a fair
I'd say that's a
characterization?
pretty good summary, right?
Okay, so a lot of people who are just starting in business can't afford to, have a whole C-suite class to help them on their board. We recommend, we've talked about this in the past, having creating your own board, even if it's from people that aren't, full-time on payroll.
Right.
And
right.
you can be part of that board is basically the way it works.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the model that I work in my business is to serve as that part-time advisor, and be there to help through the, strategic issues as the business owner grows their business.
So when someone meets with you for the first time to kind of see if it's a good fit, what does that initial meeting look like? And full disclosure, me and you are going to be having that meeting tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, that first meeting that I get to know business owners is really about learning about them and their goals of what they would like to achieve with their business. Then I usually go into a needs assessment with them so that I can understand what the current situation that they're in with regards to the finances of their business, the financial infrastructure that they have. Talk to them about what their desired situation looks like. Where would they like to be in the future? Mm-hmm. And then talk about how I can help them get there.
Okay. Well, that's a big weakness I've had in my business is, again, I started and I was the CEO, COO, CFO, chief legal officer, chief marketing officer, doing everything. And as we've progressed, Scott's come in and helped me out as being kind of a COO for me. Right. And one of the things we've been trying to build is, making sure that we actually have accurate financial data that we can plan with and, project out to the future. So as we're thinking, hey, we'd like to put a sales team together in Downers Grove and then, open up an office in Lake Forest, be able to make the projections of what that's going to cost and how that will influence, positively or negatively the bottom line. And that's what you can do, right?
Exactly. And that you're thinking along the right lines. You're a very forward-thinking business owner that is thinking about those issues because you're not going to move forward if you don't, set those goals for yourself and, do the analysis and put the things in place that are going to allow you to get there.
Do you, as a quick, do you have a checklist that you go in with to try to find out somebody's, I suppose, financial health or I don't know if financial health's a good way to put it, but where they're at on the spectrum of whether they're forward thinking or whether they're way behind or anything like that. Do you have a?
I don't. There isn't really a cookie cutter to it. It's having the experience, having built financial infrastructures for several companies over the course of my career. I kind of have seen the gamut. I've worked in startup companies that were pure startup from ground floor and built them up, and I've worked in large corporations. So I think I have a kind of a broad experience base, to go from. But I really approach it as an exploratory venture as I kind of learn about the business and make my own assessments. And put that together.
Are there any major struggles that most all companies have that are kind of across the board, size being large or small? Is there anything that you see all the time?
I don't know if I'd say that there's any, common. I think something that every, business goes through is developing a culture around being on the same page with regards to the management team and the financial management of the company.
Sure.
And that begins with really, the small company, the business owner, it's kind of they're doing it all. But eventually, to grow the company, they have to share accountability with others in that organization, and building systems and processes in place that keep everybody on the same page. They talk a common language, so to speak, about the financial results of the company. So when they talk about gross margins, everybody understands what they're talking about when we're talking about gross margin as to what expenses are in that. And so that is something I think that's fairly common that every company has to go through. And you see companies at various stages of how sophisticated they are with that.
And the terms are not always regular. I know when one of the early parts when I was helping Kevin, I was using run rate. And I've used that with people, and they look at you like they have no idea. And it's not even that complicated, but people just don't know to use or have never used. And especially when businesses are starting out, they have no idea what words to even what to call. They know what it is.
Right.
They just don't know what to call it.
As you can imagine, in my business, there's a fair amount of education that goes on as I get in to work with business owners and the different levels of sophistication they are with regards to, the financials of their business. But that's part of my goal too, is to bring them along, and help them succeed in their business and achieve their goals.
When you're meeting with someone who's maybe a new business owner or a small business owner, and they say, well, geez, it's just basically me and maybe a 2-person staff, or maybe it's just me right now. I'm too small to need a CFO. What do you usually say to them? Because I know you deal with smaller companies sometimes.
Yeah, I'd say no company is really too small. It's a matter of how much of my time do they really need.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a very, very small company that's a handful of people doesn't need my time as much as a company that's 50 employees. But at the end of the day, I believe I can bring some value to them with regards to providing advice and providing that those services that are appropriate for where they're at. Because where they're at is different than the $10 million company that has 50 employees and is just kind of in a different place in its life cycle.
So they're probably not too small. The problems are just maybe less complex. And they need less of your time, meaning you'd be more affordable,
right?
As opposed to so they're not paying for the same type of CFO services that, a 50-employee company would be paying for, because there's just not as much complexity that would go into the work, right?
Yeah. And that's what I like about the model that I work in now with B2B CFO is I can be scalable like that.
No, that's great. So we're talking today about avoiding the cash flow danger zone. You want to tell me a little bit what you mean by the cash flow
Sure.
danger zone?
That's an issue that we talk about within our firm and is talked about in a book that the founder of our firm wrote. And it's really about that danger zone where a company that's in growth mode, in a sense, kind of outgrows its infrastructure and gets itself into the cash flow danger zone where your cash needs of your business are outstripping your ability to fund the business. And oftentimes that can be fatal. And that's obviously how a lot of companies fail is they just they run out of cash, which is the ultimate scorekeeping in running a business. So when we talk about that, we really talk about step back a little bit. One thing we like to educate business owners on is kind of the real organizational chart that we talk about in businesses, and talk about 3 kind of main functions and people within an organization. In the beginning of a business, the business owner and founder probably does all these things themselves, but eventually as they grow, they need to split their time between what we call being the finder, the minder, and the grinder. And I love those terms because you could kind of just take from them, kind of understand what they mean. The finder being that visionary person who's leading the business, who's the change catalyst, who's really looking toward the future of what this business is going to become. The minders being the people doing the administrative work and and doing a lot more of the things that are in the past, so to speak, doing the scorekeeping. And then the grinders, which is often where a lot of business owners start, is they were a grinder and they were really good at what they did. And they said, I'm going to go do this on my own. And the grinders are the people doing the day-to-day. It's the person on the production line. It's the person delivering the services and picking up the phone, the phone to take that customer service call. It's in the moment, doing the work, serving the customers. So, we talk about that organization chart. And as a business grows, that business owner can find themselves getting pulled out of that finder role.
Sure.
More and more. And they've got to find that balance between doing the minding and grinding of their business, but also leading their business forward and managing their time between those functions.
We've talked about, on this podcast, we've talked about the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Are you familiar with that book?
I am familiar with that.
And a lot of what that book is about, I bring it up all the time.
It's come up every one, I think.
It's my favorite business book. And, it's not like I've read it 3 times. It's just the point is so simple. It's, you start your business, you're the grinder. You don't have time to do any of the finding or the minding. Right. And the goal of a business owner should be to graduate from being a grinder to a minder to a finder and let someone else do the minding. Maybe that's you. Make sure that everything is running the way it's supposed to, and the grinding, which is actually the production of the widget that is right. Your business. And you kind of help people get to the point where they can make the high level decisions without, figuring out how to create the systems for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, someone like myself can come in and help them free up some of that time to where they can focus where their highest value is. Because ultimately for that entrepreneur and that business owner to create value and build value for themselves and their business is being that finder and growing their business and being about growth. What we have seen, and I've seen this in companies I've been with over time, is then you kind of have this infrastructure curve as you build your business. And at first you're as you go beyond the kind of solopreneur stage and you're building a business and you're hiring employees and delegating and building the infrastructure within your company, generating sales and cash for your business. That can be a really exciting time. But there's also a point where the infrastructure you have can peak out on you, and you can in a sense outgrow, especially in high growth companies. There's a risk of getting beyond where your infrastructure is and outgrowing your infrastructure, and then that causing you problems. And sometimes business owners kind of start having some illusions and they misjudge how well their company is doing if they're really not on top of it. Or they just make mistakes because they don't have good information to make decisions. And that's a lot about my career is making sure that information is there for the business owner to make good decisions to keep moving their business forward. And so they risk outgrowing that infrastructure, and then you can really run into problems. You run into you can have a lot of symptoms that develop from that infrastructure being stressed. Delayed deliveries to your customers, which leads to poor customer satisfaction. You can have employees getting burned out and dissatisfaction with their jobs, turnover within your going up within your employee base. All those types of things that you see as symptoms are indications that the company is stressed with regards to its infrastructure.
And so when we say infrastructure, what are we talking about there? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Is it systems, the right people, enough people?
I'd say it's kind of all those things. It's systems, processes, the right people, and the right seats. That's a term I've heard before, and I'd like a lot about having the right people in the right seats. And where I come in, my background is really in the financial systems, the financial processes, and that part of the infrastructure that is there to help the CEO evaluate where the business at and make appropriate decisions to move it forward.
So you talked about illusions that some business owners have and making judgments based on those illusions rather than on the data. What are some mistakes that you see people making based on, false understandings of what their company is?
Sure. I've seen companies make bad decisions with regards to what they charge for their product. Sometimes they get in a situation where they have a big customer, and they get pressed on price, and they make concessions there, and then they become dependent on a customer that may be a lot of revenue, but might be marginal from a profitability standpoint. Those are very tough decisions to make. Talked to a business owner in the past year that found himself where 80% of his business was with one customer, and it was a great big customer.
That's a scary place to be.
That's a very scary place to be. And then when that customer goes away, what business that you thought you had really wasn't a business.
Yeah, and I've found that beginning entrepreneurs I speak with often come up with that idea that the more I make, the better. So they're looking if I could break 100,000, if I could break 200,000, and they're not as focused on the margins. And if you have no margin, you made a really big number, say $1 million. But if you only take home $10, then
right,
you've really done no good.
You're doing a lot.
If you lose 100,000, then you've really.
Because I think we all know, again, the bottom line, the net income you take home, and the cash flow out of that business is the ultimate measuring stick.
Right.
Not revenue, like you said. You can do a lot of work and not get anything for it.
And generate a big number, but
yeah.
We've talked in the past about what your goals are for your business, and there's a couple different goals you can set. There's the big entrepreneurial dream. I want to be on an island with a yacht. There's this is what it looks like when my business is functioning properly, a reasonable expectation of success. And then there's the minimal acceptable results, where if you stay doing the minimum acceptable results or below those for an extended period of time, that's when your business is going to be folding up. If you're not, if I say I need my business to generate, $1,000 a week in income for me, or I can't pay my mortgage, well, that's the minimum acceptable results. And if you go beyond that line for, however long you have before your savings start to dry up, then you've got no choice but to cry uncle and fold up your business. It seems like what you do is help people figure out which one of those goals they're moving towards, like the trend. Are you moving in the right direction towards big entrepreneurial dream, or are you headed towards minimum acceptable results, and then help them figure out how to correct it if they're going towards, going in the wrong direction? Would that be a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment, Kevin. I appreciate that. Yeah. And that, as I talked about, is getting to know these business owners and what their goals are. And assessing where they are along that line of achieving those goals. I do like to work with people that have big goals. that's always fun. But it is being realistic with them as to where they are and what those goals are and what's going to take to achieve those goals. And everybody has different timelines.
Sure.
Some people want to make that happen tomorrow, and some people say, okay, if I can get here in the next 5 years, 10 years, that's good for me.
Mm-hmm. Is there a type of business you found more success from the strategies you have over another type, industrial versus service, or anything like that?
I really haven't. I think the basic principles that I've learned being a chief financial officer over the years are applicable to high growth software companies that have lots of opportunities coming their way, or even the company that's the industrial company that's been around for decades and is exploring new business lines to get into to generate new growth through their business and leverage the competencies that they've developed. They may not be the company that's going to grow 100%, 200% a year, but maybe if, their goals are, hey, if we can grow 20% a year, that's great. And and I think both of those are a success.
So what sort of, it seems like it's a two-stage process. If your business is heading in the wrong direction, or just even moving in the right direction but not fast enough, you need to, one, gather the data. Well, maybe it's a three-step process. One is gather the data, have the systems in place to actually collect the data for what, your financial data for your company. Number two would be analyze it and have the capacity to analyze it. And number three would be act on that analysis. Let's start with gathering it. How do you help business owners actually capture their financial data?
Sure. That is one of the first things I do is assess the systems and the processes they now have as to what financial information they're gathering, how they're using that financial information, and get business owners to the point where they're really using actionable financial information. You find a lot of business owners that are just working off of basic financial statements. They get a income statement from their bookkeeper, their accountant prepares, and they look through it and kind of understand the basics. But I mean, really getting to beyond the basic financial statements to metrics and ratios, and using performance indicators that are key to their business and are indicative to to key drivers of the performance of their business.
Can you give me some examples of, some key performance indicators that you've put in place in the past? I mean, I'm sure it varies from business to business, but.
Yeah, it varies from business to business. On the industrial kind of manufacturing side, there is a key indicators are definitely gross margins, and understanding gross margins. But beyond that is labor productivity is a very key component, and that goes into any business, but definitely in the industrial side. So, understanding how much leverage a business is getting from its labor, sure, and on an incremental basis, so that when you make that incremental widget, how much money do you expect to make? And in a professional services business, that's labor is what a professional services business is all about.
Sure.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this. Utilization of your people, and realization of your billing, and all those types of factors. Those are all things I've implemented as well.
Okay. So, and in my business, what I've dealt with is when things are going wrong, it's either we don't have enough business coming in the door, we're not being efficient enough in the production of that business, or not just getting enough production out of our employees. And then the third is we don't have a high enough realization rate, meaning we're not actually collecting on what we produce. I mean, for me, it's one of those three things is going wrong if my business isn't working, and then it's a matter of diagnosing where the problem lies and acting to address it. Is that kind of what you've seen in service industries as being the big factors that you're looking at?
Yeah, I'd say you're looking at the correct things there. My background, I started in professional services. I came out of school with an accounting degree and worked in public accounting, and so I was drilled heavily in the professional services business. And as I climbed the ladder in public accounting and got to running engagements and learning a bit more about beyond the X's and O's of accounting into the actually management of engagements, I became well versed in measurement of utilization and realization and the things that were key to the profitability of my firm's engagements.
Okay, so when you see somebody moving towards the financial danger zone, and you've got the data gathering systems in place, what sort of? Well, let me back it up. We're gathering the data now. What sorts of reports either do you provide or do you recommend that people take a look at on a monthly or quarterly basis to make, like the gas gauge on your car, to make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to be going?
Oh, sure. Beyond the basic financial statements, as I talked about, and taking a business and a business owner beyond just looking at those, each business is different. So I think those things obviously need to be crafted to the particular industry, to the particular business. But getting to that idea of a lot of people talk about the kind of dashboard reporting, where they can see key indicators on a regular basis, whether some businesses that's daily, weekly, definitely probably, more than monthly, that, provides them with those key indicators of the health of their business and manages it over time. Because like anything in business, it's all based upon, it's over a period of time. Are you moving in the right direction, or are things going, as you mentioned, if things are starting to go in the wrong direction, that they're going in the wrong direction, so you can start working on the initiatives to, correct the situation.
Tell me, a little bit about what dashboard reporting is. This is one of the things that Scott and I have been working on with O'Flaherty Law, but just for people who haven't been initiated into that, what does a good dashboard look like, and what is a dashboard?
Sure. A dashboard is essentially, a central reporting mechanism for the management team of a business. Generally, a lot of them are done in graphical format. You can probably do them in many different formats, whether that's, charts and tables, but it really, tries to distill into, in a sense, a single page, as I talked about those key performance indicators for a business as to what's important about your business, and those those metrics that you measure over time, that you keep track of, that are in a sense, the kind of lifeblood of your business, that whether these indicators are good or whether they're not so good, that as you said, in a sense, reporting this in a central mechanism in kind of a single page, so that you can be on top of your business.
When I used to own a gym, and when we used to own the gym, it was part of a franchise, and they had a really sophisticated dashboard system. What they would do is we get an email every day. Here's the number of new people that signed up today. Here's our sales. Here's the overhead for the month so far, and here's the cash that was brought in. And it was a one-page email, and every day we could just check our phones and say, sales are really far down this week. Is this something we need to address?
Right.
So that's a really helpful thing. And like you said, addressing it on, a weekly or bi-weekly basis as opposed to monthly or quarterly, you're able to attack the problem before you get into that cash flow danger zone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think that's key, because time is money, right? As we all, everybody says. And if you're in that situation of running your business where you're waiting for the books for the month to close and the accounting to get done, and then you're waiting another week or two, and then you're getting now you're looking at information that is
a problem.
And it's weeks old at that point, and you're going, I wish I would have known that was a problem a month ago when it was a problem, as opposed to now just finding out it was a problem.
So when you're going through and helping a business, like a small business like mine that's got maybe less than 10 employees, do you often create the infrastructure, the system for this dashboard reporting, and then have the staff actually effectuate it, or are you usually the one that actually gathers the data?
Well, generally is I work with the staff that the company has. I mean, that's part of my model. Is also one of the values I bring is a delegation model. Ultimately, my clients aren't going to pay me to be down in the nitty gritty of their business, but to educate their staff and mentor their staff on these principles, so that we can put these systems in place, and then ultimately their staff run these systems and not me. I don't want to make them dependent on me for those things. And that's where I believe I can bring a lot more value and bring leverage to them, is to, in a sense, again, be that outsourced chief financial officer, that everything isn't dependent on me to come in and bring all the answers. It's to help the organization put those processes in place, so they come up with the answers themselves.
And that model with a good CFO, even if it's in-house, would do the same things, not be doing the actual. So
correct.
It's a great, it's how it should be.
Anything else to add, Mike?
I don't think so.
Well, if someone wants your help, how can they reach you?
They can reach me at Michael Reese. That's MichaelReese at B2B CFO. And that's B, the number 2, BCFO.com.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Kevin.
Michael.
Thanks, Scott.
at a